I think when you think back to culture, like Migos has regenerated so many times, and I think people didn't think they had it in them.
Right.
Like even the Bad and Bougie moment, they had been declared dead like years before that.
Many times.
They put out a dozen mixtapes before they ever put out a debut album. Then they put out a debut album and it's just pre-streaming, so it flops.
They survived the Drake hype wave too, where like, Block Boy JB couldn't continue on with his career at a certain point because the Drake spotlight was just too big. Migos somehow managed that.
And when you think about Culture, which is really the moment they broke through to the mainstream, I do think Culture was sonically different enough. I think the main thing they did was like they slowed down a little bit. The beats sounded a little bit more expensive. There was more empty space. The track list was short, which you never really seen with them. And then they just sort of said, fuck it again. But that's because, like, they're punks. Like, they just do what they want.
Right.
And they're just confident that if they do it enough times, you're either going to get it or you're not. But something will click with someone. And it's just not precious. And I think, when they tried to branch out, and you remember, like, Stir Fry with Pharrell? Like, I feel like that's stuff like that is them trying to find a new sonic lane, and it just doesn't interest them. And I almost respect that more, that they're just going to stick to their sound. Again, like, to me, Migos are the Ramones, right? Like, they're just going to play the same chords over and over and over again.
This is true, yeah.
And you'll like it or you won't, but like what are they going to, like, the Ramones are going to go in the studio with Phil Spector? Like, no thank you.
But I feel like the Ramones are not concerned with how popular they are, or at least like as a punk band you're supposed to keep up that image, whereas with the Migos you as their career has sort of started to take a dive, you see them being salty with QC, you see them all of a sudden involved in feuds with Lil Baby and other people, and like at least you sort of get the vibe that them not being on top doesn't sit right with them. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of like to rub it in that they're maybe not in the spot right now that they were 5 years ago.
But think about how much good music they've put out in the last 10 years.
Right.
Like, there's dozens of Migos projects. Maybe you don't like all of them. Maybe you don't like most of them. But if you stack up every good song they've made and every good moment they've made, memes, interviews, just culturally impactful little moments.
Yeah,
they have as robust of a career as anyone. Right. And I think the other thing is, rap is so on to the next one. It's such a young man's game that there's almost nothing they could do to be relevant 10 years into their career. Yeah. They could be making Good Kid, Mad City at this point, and people would still be like, Migos are washed.
The best thing you can really hope for at a certain point in a rapper's career is to be considered like competent, foot soldiers, like even like a Gucci
or businessmen,
right? That's like the most important thing, because I was thinking of that a lot when I was reading the QC section of your book and realizing like how close P and Gucci were, which I've seen them together in real life a bunch of times and stuff, so I know that. But when you see Gucci going so hard to put his label together, and he's had a lot of pretty blatant failures, and he's had some success stories that then like pretty quickly turn into failures because the people get locked up. But I think to Gucci, he looks at what P and Coach K have done, and that's, to him, that's just like the ultimate thing that he needs to achieve to be a CEO and to be talked about. Because I think Gucci's always kind of had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about Jay-Z. I think he wants to be talked about like Jay-Z. He's more or less said that a few times, and it's kind of like, I think in order to really truly stamp yourself as an entrepreneur in hip hop, you pretty much need to go there.
It's a question of stability, and I think that QC gets overlooked for how stable they've been. Think of a rap label. How many rap labels have churned out that many national stars?
It's true. They have an extremely good percentage.
You think back to a No Limit or a Cash Money. Cash Money is probably the example, and these are the two places that are the real blueprints for that. But then even a G Unit, you have 50, you have Game, who's tangential, right?
Yeah,
he's not even from New York.
He was with him for like a year. Yeah.
And then what? It's Banks.
Banks and Buck had their little time, Tony Yayo to a certain extent, but then
the same.
It's like 5-6 friends of 50s essentially. Yeah.
Exactly, or ASAP Mob. Right? You have Rocky and Ferg, and
that's pretty much
pretty much it. But QC was able to turn Migos into Yachty, into Baby, City Girls, and then all of the other tangential people. Like, these are real national independent stars. Like, they function without one another. And I think, but they also function together as this sort of Voltron. And I think that that's like, it's a crazy run when you really lay it all out.
It is, and it deserves to be documented in such a way.
All right, people, we just hit 300,000 subscribers. You know we're trying to hit 400,000 subscribers. So that little red button, tap it, tap in. We appreciate y'all.